and extension cable too.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. It's much appreciated on a day like today, because I know as soon as this is off, I'm out of here. I'm going to get my 1 day of vitamin D. Thank you though. It's great to see everyone here. And we asked Tom Lewis. Tom's been a friend for years, as a previous CIS Excellence Awards winner. As I was saying, today is the day of the CIS Awards, had everything been going according to plan. So it's fitting that he's joining us here today. He has 2 or 3 businesses under the Mhor, M-H-O-R banner, near Balkidder. And Monachyle Mhor, as far as I know, correct me if I'm wrong, was started by your mum, I think, as a B&B many years ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
She's a terrific character. Jean, I met her once. Tom knows the story. I'll maybe enlighten you later on, but she was absolutely hilarious and just such a lovely lady. Scotland's only blind chef, I believe she was, and she taught herself to cook.
I don't believe her really. No one can do as much. Yeah, I think she's been making it up all these years. No, she is a force of nature, and my parents were very much, they were the ones that had the vision, coming from a blind person, and we were the ones that took it on in a way. They were quite, I think people tend to forget this industry. There's a lot of couples involved. Quite often you have a front-facing part of the couple, and there's another one at the back does all the work. And they were very much, that couple. Yeah,
so they started in the 70s. So basically, you've got Monachyle Mhor Hotel, which is an iconic kind of hotel near Balkidder. But you've expanded the business now into more fish, more bread,
fish,
bakery.
more bread, more for, and the shop, more in store. And it's been quite interesting. With expansion comes its own difficulties, especially for myself, wondering, what do I do? When I used to add salt and pepper, I stood behind my stove, it was very clear what I did. And I think some of the hardest things I've challenged with is actually finding what my role has become over the years, because cooking is still my safe spot. If I'm in a bad mood, I go home and cook, because, that's my safety bet, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Were you the main, you weren't the exec chef over the last few years, were you? You were for a while.
Marisha's taken over for me. Marisha and I worked together now for 10 years, and it's great. She's amazing. She's about to have a second child. We within our whole company, we've got quite a big thing about, we've had, I thought it was over 30, but someone told me this year, we've had 40 people meet and get married while working for me in the last 25 years.
Wow. Hey. That's amazing. And most of them now on furlough, enjoying their honeymoons.
Yeah, I mean, furlough. God, where do we start with that? I spoke to you yesterday, and I personally think the government's given everybody too much. I make no bones about it. I think if the living wage is £150 a week, we all should have got £150 a week, and we all actually understand a lot more how other people have to survive. We've got 75 people on furlough right now. Yesterday, I think all of us, we've all been quite emotional over these last 9-10 weeks. We go up or down. Yesterday, I was quite down. I was frustrated. Managers or staff just not keeping in touch. Why do they need to? They get 80% of their money sitting at home. The one thing they've always had now is time. Whenever we have management meetings, or we haven't got enough time, or we're going to do this, we've had so much time right now. I just hope we can capitalize on it. But I think that's just me. Not seeing people face to face is quite different, because we all live in a social bubble at work.
Yeah, it's a mix of emotions at the moment, isn't it? People who run their own businesses are having good days and bad days, and it's this. We were talking about it yesterday. It's this. This culture of hope on the one hand, but also the uncertainty, and just no one's ever gone through this across the whole industry before. So we've got no one to lean on in terms of, is it going to be okay? And then we realize we have to lean on everyone.
And I think with news right now, people listen to the news they want to hear. They don't listen to a broad spectrum of news. And I also think people are getting given a platform to speak about stuff right now that often don't know enough about the industry. But they're very good at, they can speak well, they can write a good sentence, so they get given a platform. I know myself, the last 3 weeks, the first 3 weeks, I got quite down. I beat myself up because I was trying to plan for something that I didn't know what I was planning for. And I was coming up with all these different ideas, how to get open and everything else. And that's been quite challenging because, you know, we've been quite clear what our business model has been for a long time. And now I'm looking at every single thing we do thinking, right, why do we do it like that? Let's change it. But I think that's easier said than done because the fact is, you know, as long as the banks are on board, we need the banks to be on board saying, okay, this business model was before, because I think it will go back to how it was. It's just that we've got a long, you know, there is going to be, we have to write off this year. You know, even if we do get open, you know, most of our businesses are geared to run at a minimum of 70% occupancy. And if we're not running at those levels, we're not going to make the repayments. We're not, you know, so we're going to have to change our business model to make that work. And I think it's really important to make sure the banks stay on side. And that'll have to come from government, you know?
Yeah, you were saying yesterday you were concerned along those lines of the banks sort of being very free with their money at the moment and eager to help. But then, you know, one of the questions is after all this, you know, the lockdown ends and the restrictions start to lift and people get out, will the banks and the lending institutions be as supportive, or will they just turn around and say, right, you owe us now?
Yeah, and I think as an industry, you know, let's be really honest, as an industry before we went into this, you know, I'm very frustrated. As in, no one's put our prices up the last 10 years, really. You know, a bowl of soup has been about £3, anywhere from like £2.80 to, you know, £4.50 for a very long time. And supermarkets have dictated what the price of food is worth. And I think when we do go and open up again, I think we've got to be much more conscious about what is our, not just food, but what is our product worth? How much is a bottle of wine? You know, most of us spend a lot of time sourcing wine. And, you know, that's the fun part of it. But I think we all take it very seriously because we're trying to find something different. You know, no different to all the food we put on the menu. You know, everything we buy, we know the suppliers, we've tried it. We try really hard to do that. And there is a cost that comes with that. And I just think supermarkets have just devalued everything. And I just think as an industry, we have a unique opportunity right now to come together as an industry and say, you know, we've got a great story. It needs to be true. Consumers can see right through it. But, you know, it has been really, I mean, I'm sounding quite positive, but I mean, you spoke to me yesterday, and yesterday I was super frustrated because it is everything, you know, knowing that it's Friday tomorrow, what I had, you know, I like to get everything, my end of the week is Friday from a other business type of day, and I couldn't get anything done because people are working from home, they didn't have the right paperwork, and it's super frustrating. And I think for those of us who are used to just getting things done straight away, these have been quite challenging times.
Could I ask just a question? One of the things that could happen or should happen fairly swiftly, but the industry's been fighting for years for it, is about VAT and the reduction for hospitality down to sort of 5%. There's been a big campaign for many years going on. And is there any scope, is there any movement on that at all? Has anybody had, in fact, sort of opening up to the floor, has anybody had any inkling or indication that things are changing on that front? Because it would help operators.
I honestly can't see that happening.
What's the reason for that pause? I mean, it's you know, it's never happened up till now, but what are the reasons now, even in these times, or particularly in these times?
Because the fact of the matter is the government are going to be so hungry for money that they're going to possibly even use the VAT mechanism as a way of increasing revenue.
But the argument for stimulating trade through the VAT reduction isn't washing with them, is that right?
I haven't seen any evidence, but you know, maybe I've missed something. I don't have the monopoly on all this information, but I certainly haven't seen any evidence. And I suspect that, I mean, at some point in the near future, we're going to have to start picking up the bill for this. And as Lewis said, you know, we've got all these people, and you're absolutely right, you're bang on. We're trading people the wrong way. We've had huge numbers of people sat in their back gardens for the last 8 or 9 weeks being paid 80% of what they normally get paid to do bugger all. You know, why do they want to go work earn the other 20%? but the bill is huge, and obviously that will depend on government policy how they rectify that. But I'm sure there's going to be adjustments to the taxation, and I wouldn't be entirely surprised if VAT was used as a partial solution.
I suppose the thing is, I think with business rates, like business rates, I think for our industry have been wrong for a long time. We're too visible. You can walk into any of our restaurants, our hotels, you can see that we spent money on the toilet. So you put new lights in, new bar, you've made your business better. And I think, having this rates holiday is a massive thing because, we lost our rating appeal last year, and I'm now going to have to get QC involved because, I spent 3 years ago, I drove around Scotland looking at different businesses, and I put a model together to Scottish government saying, do you know how unfair rating is for our industry? And I kind of, they'd listen to me and everything else, but I mean, it was black and white to see how unfair we are treated. And it's because we are so visible, because they all think we're making a fortune, because there we are, sitting there in our lovely restaurants, eating the best of food, drinking the best of wine, not understanding that we are a business and there's a whole other machine that goes on behind us. And it's not just the waiters, the chefs, the cleaners, it's the accountants, it's the lawyers, it's all the other people that we employ. And I think everybody loves the whiskey industry because, yes, they pay tax. They only employ 12 people. We employ thousands, especially in rural areas. I mean, and this is why, going back to our business model when we open up, we can't open up at the moment like we did before. So we're looking, do we become private groups of self-catering or catered groups just for people within a bubble? Look at the amount of 50th birthday parties that didn't happen. So that's an age group of people who their kids are a little bit more grown up, maybe. They might still be at school, but it's just at the end. They've got a bit more money. They want to relive their youth. They want to go away and have a nice time. Because, to open up like we did before, we don't have the space for social distancing unless we put a marquee on the front lawn and we've looked at putting little cabins inside or, garden sheds, this type of thing, because we're very fortunate to have space. But unless we can run at a circuit occupancy, we're going to have to lay off a lot of people. And that's a reality.
David Wood, could I bring you in here? You were just going to say something a second ago.
It was about VAT. No, it was Bob Cotton last week. He said every industry is a special case. And in this particular instance, why are we more special than anybody else other than the fact perhaps we employ a few more people? Yeah. And he said that it was a lost cause, VAT, a reduction. So I think you're probably right. The rating values is one area to look at, but I mean, there are going to be tremendous job losses in this industry as a result of this. I mean, I'd like to ask Tom. I'd like to ask Tom where he sees his business concentrating on, because I looked at his business and it looks very diverse, and he must have learned a lot of lessons of where profit comes from as a result of that, and where he sees the future.
I think quality. We have a bakery in Calendar, and when we originally started that, my vision was to sell a lovely sourdough loaf, a macaron, a chocolate tart. I sell pies, I sell brownies, and I sell lots of bread. Okay, now sourdough. All our loaves are made from a sour starter now. We don't say that because it does put some people off, but I think if I go there, we're looking at doing a much smaller product line. Wild Hearth Bakery at Comrie Croft in Comrie, he has done such an amazing job. His big sourdough loaf, which is the same weight as ours, he's getting nearly £4 for. And I think, well done. That's someone who said, this is what my product's worth, and I'm going to stick with it. And in Calendar, I've had Mrs. Smith, who's come every day for strawberry tart. I stopped making strawberry tarts when I first took over, right? When the Scottish season was over. And I thought only 1 or 2 people would complain. I make them all year. I have to put raspberry bloody jam on them to make them taste better. So I think I'm going to go back to what my original concepts were, I think, at the hotel. We're looking just to become even more local with what we source. Maybe do smaller menus. I don't know, more 84. I mean, I'm not a pizza person, but I've been practicing making pizzas because they travel. If people aren't going to go out, maybe. I mean, I'm actually really struggling to find out what the format is right now. I think what I do want to do is get quality. I think hospitality, I think we've always been good at. I think as a rule, we try to give good service and value for money. But we've got to get the confidence of people back at the moment.
Yeah.
That's a big thing.
I looked at your offering, and obviously a lot of it is very bespoke. I mean, it's also greatly, it's an unpleasant word, but it's handled. It is placed. It's pretty.
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
wonder how much confidence the consumer will have in that sort of food going forward into the future. Will we not go back into sort of family service where something comes out of the oven and goes to the plate or to the customer to
I think in the short term, maybe. But
Yeah.
I mean, I think once we get something, the fact is we beat lots of other things, but it's just taken time. And I think, there will always be a market for certain types of things. And I think people have got quite short-term memories. And I think, I was speaking to my sister-in-law who lives in Switzerland. And she was saying they were in Geneva last week. They had to go there for work. And all the outside areas were really busy. But then you went inside and there was no one there. And I think, we've had such a good spell of weather lately that everyone said, we can have outside dining. Now, I've lived in Scotland over 30 years now, and this has been the best spell of weather I've known in 30 years, right? Consistently. So I think how we manage that, and we have to press government and say, as an industry, this is, when was the last time as an industry we all got together and we've got time, but we're speaking like this? And I think we need to get good people to put it on paper, and, it needs to be able to change and move. But I mean, I don't know what my business model is. I want to keep an element of it. I think comfort food. If you look at everybody who's doing takeaways from their restaurants at the moment, and a lot of them are going much more down the comfort line.
Yes.
And I totally agree. But I would also like to know realistically, how many is it actually paying? Because let's be really honest, most of them are using furloughed staff, aren't they? And they're doing it because they feel that they've got to have a presence. And as we're used to working as an industry. Like we work, that's what we thrive on. And I think we've got to have an open conversation of the value. I mean, I looked at different menus from lots of different restaurants throughout Scotland, and I was seeing dishes at £3. And I'm thinking, hang on, guys, what is worth £3? I mean, a pack of cigarettes is a tenner or just over now. And you just, they're made millions, mass produced. No one has to do anything. We've got to peel something, stand over a stove, cook it, put in a box and take it. And I think we've undervalued ourselves as an industry. And I would like to think of the model has to be, we have to look at ourselves as an industry and say, right, we've got to start putting a higher value on stuff. And I do think supermarkets, you have to love to hate them because they're brilliant. They're open 24 hours a day. They give you a big car park. They make you they make lots of money. You spend more than you ever need. And that's all irrelevant. But I think they have devalued our industry. And we've been a fault of that because we thought, oh my God, we go there and we think, oh, maybe we are only worth so much. And the consumer's just going to have to pay a bit more. And if we need to start from that when we start going back and getting open again.
I would say that just to come back on you about supermarkets, if you've been around a supermarket recently, they're pretty hostile places now.
Yeah.
So I think perhaps maybe our own bonhomie might be quite useful.
Yeah.
Peter McKenna, you joined us this week. Thanks for dropping by. Peter owns or co-owns the Gannet restaurant, another CIS Awards, I believe, winning establishment for 2 or 3 years ago. I saw you on the news earlier this month, I believe, talking about the ailments being suffered by the industry. What are your thoughts on what's going on at the moment and from your business perspective?
Just like Tom, it's a roller coaster of emotions. Some days we're coming up with plans and we think it's all gelling together and we're optimistic. And other days we look around the empty room that is our restaurant, and it's quite profound sadness, to be honest. We're hoping on August reopening. I'm in the process of getting my restaurant rearranged. I'm chopping the bar in half. I'm getting rid of most of the tables. I'm building partitions. I'm trying to make it a safe and comfortable space for our guests when or if they do return.
And sorry, I'm having to mute myself in between because there's a child Zoom call going on with school next door and it's interfering. So I'll be very quick. How about your peers and your contemporaries in Glasgow? Are they? I mean, you're chatting a lot with them because a big thing about a big positive in a way of all of this is the need and the desire for some collaboration. And in the past, everyone had seen each other as maybe competition or competitors within their local sort of geographical sphere. Now, a lot of this is now to do with we're all in this together. We've got to get out of this together, and people are feeding ideas off each other. Have you had much inspiration from your friends and peers?
Yeah, well, here in our little block in Finiston, we're all very friendly. I've had a couple of Zoom calls with John McLeod in the Crab Shack. You've probably seen his plans for a giant greenhouse, which were, they're quite extravagant. But it was great to see somebody to think about something to try to drag us out of this big depression that we're in and try to put life into our businesses. Most of the restaurants and bars around here are all quite small. They'll never be able to contain their business. They'll never be able to make any money with the social distancing, with 2 meters or 1.5 meters. Hopefully we can see it be brought down to 1 meter. Hopefully we'll see a bit of common sense in the government's implementation. At the end of the day, I know what we have here. I speak to some of my peers. I don't speak to them all. I like to do my own thing here. We've got a small kitchen. I know everybody on this block has small kitchens. The chance of us being able to separate ourselves by 2 meters or 1.5 meter or 1 meter is impossible. But we can take every precaution. We were doing charity work there for 8 weeks. We had 3 chefs in a kitchen at any one time. And we definitely weren't a meter apart. It was impossible, but we had gloves, we had masks, we took all the precautions that we felt were suitable, and we didn't allow anybody on site that was in any way poorly. I think common sense will have to prevail in this if you want our sector to get back onto its feet.
Just unmuting myself. Yeah, thank you, Peter, for that. Ed Kerr has just. Oh, sorry, John. Carry on.
Hi, it's back to Tom really, and what you said there too, Alex, is the whole. In week 1, we talked about the disconnect between where's the single entry point to come together. So when Tom, you mentioned about coming together as an industry to challenge government about whatever opportunities or the VAT or whatever. Who is that body, or is there a body that like a single entry point to government? I mean, would you see that as the STA, or there's so many organisations out there, but who in fact would that be, or is there one?
I think that's a good point, and I think this is now perhaps an opportunity to bring everything together. We've talked a lot over the last few weeks about collaboration, and I think as an industry, we're actually doing a pretty damn good job of that. And this is obviously evidence of just that. But I think you're right. We perhaps do need to start thinking about having a single organisation that represents the whole industry, rather than having all these different things that are fragmented all over the place.
No, I totally agree. And I think, we should also maybe put some money into it. If every restaurant, put £100 in it, £10 into something that we all agreed, because I think we always expect so many people to do something for nothing. And I think that's unfair. And I think if we were to put something into, and I think we need to have almost a very small set of goals initially, because I think quite often, because of our industry, so you have city centre, you have rural, you have all these different type of businesses. This is the first time we've come together as united, and we need to have, and it could be rates It could be VAT. It could, we need to have a very small window of things that we want to actually achieve, and we only pressure that, and we put some money towards that. Because let's be really honest, if we could reduce any of those things for a nominal amount we put in, the paybacks would be phenomenal. And I think, it's like chefs. How many chefs, I'm not a member of that chef. So I am a member of that. And I mean, I call it the Fat Chef Brigade because I'm not really a member of any of them because my mother cooks my favorite meal. We just tend to forgotten about actually what we do. We supply a great service. We make people very happy. That's a whole. You come to a hotel, and from the minute you cross over, if you think you go to any of the great hotels in Scotland, Grey Walls, the noisiest gravel. You go to Beppo, it's not anymore, but Connell Bridge up to the left, up to the right, right there, the Rumbly Bridge. We give experiences, and we've got so bogged down with finance, running a business, and everything else. We've actually forgotten how many good things we've actually got going on in Scotland right now. We are quite unique.
Sorry, Tom. I was just going to say, do you think then that this whole experience will then liberate us and actually get back to a bit of the basics? Because these operators that have got something unique, there's a big opportunity now. If air travel is not going to take off for another year, people aren't going to be going abroad. Is this then the opportunity to be able to really celebrate that uniqueness?
Yeah, surely we've got Visit Scotland. We've already got a body there which is funded. I don't know how many of you actually, I go down to their offices about every season really, just to see what's happening. If you're not a member, you can't complain. And they do get some government money. And I just feel that, let's use some of the resources we have got with some key individuals from the private sector lobbying with them. Because at the end of the day, they've got the contacts. Let's use everything we've already got instead of trying to make new contacts,
Yeah, quite. I know it is about it's contacts and collaboration. Kevin, from the catering sector, have you noticed? You've been on a couple of these calls over the last few weeks. Have you noticed any changes coming up? Is there anything within contract catering that's beginning to shift, or is it all still uncertain?
It's all very uncertain. But a couple of sites reopen, kind of related to oil and gas, kind of key sector working. But it's packed lunches is the only level that we're prepared to go to with our clients just now, just to maintain the physical distancing with both our customers and our teams. And again, very limited amount of chefs coming back in order to provide that. And it's difficult to get the right amount of kitchen people back within the kitchen to provide the same level of service. It's not possible maintaining 2 metre distancing. So I'm hopeful that will change in due course. But a lot of sites are thinking about how we can reopen and making plans. And our style of service is predominantly through a counter, so personal experience similar to Tesco, online even pre-orders. That's something that we're looking at with a couple of providers so that people can order food from the desk and then click and collect almost. So just having to think differently. But the general feel across business and industry workplace sites is that everything will be very, very slow in terms of returning to any kind of normality. And a lot of the office space are planning never to fully populate buildings again. So we'll see.
Thanks, Kevin. Gary McLean, you live in the kitchen. How do you see this panning out in terms of distancing within the kitchen? So there's a lot of talk about restaurants and hotels and how guests are going to do that. How does that work practically, or how is it going to work practically?
I actually think the reality, I'm still out and about. I'm still at the back door of butchers and producers and stuff like that. And I see people out working, bakers at McGee's and stuff like that. And there's no social distance at all. They're standing high-fiving each other, having their cigarettes as normal, showing each other their phones, and the exact same. I don't care what MD says, as soon as his kitchen's open, social distancing in a kitchen will not happen, I don't think. As soon as that heat of service happens, You know, these guys will be so focused on getting that job done. I think social distancing, I think it might last days, not even weeks, within a kitchen. And yeah, you can mask and you can glove, but I don't think it will happen. You know, with all the best will in the world, I think these chefs will just go in and do what they do. You know, that's
it's
the reality.
impossible.
I do. I just think once they're, I mean, you know how tough service is, you know, and whatever happens, they're still going to be busy because you're going to have reduced staff. I just think that, you know, that social distancing is just going to be it's going to become secondary to actually getting the job done, rightly or wrongly.
It already is to some extent. I mean, Betty and I walk along to the co-op here in Langham, and you know, they've got the one-way system and all the rest of it. But the reality is that you go into the average supermarket, and
it's total chaos. Yeah,
you see members of staff stacking the shelves. They're not maintaining any distance. No. I was talking to my stepson earlier on in the week. They've got a small pub down in the Yorkshire Dales, and they went down to Skipton at the end of last week. And Matthew said it was just like nothing had ever changed. Yeah. And I think that is the way. Yeah, people will start off with all the best intentions in the world, but the practicalities of life will kick in, and it will just won't. It won't happen in the way that the government is describing it anyway.
There's also a massive part of the population that don't think it affects them, you know, within a certain age group, you know, and if they don't have anybody old or young or vulnerable back at home, I don't think they'll care, you know. So, you know, I think there's a kind of attitude that you need to get it anyway, you know, to get past it. But I don't know, it's funny times. I think the biggest opportunity we've got just now is in hospitality is to get rid of that discount culture. You know, Tom was talking about earlier about price, you know, don't undervalue, you know, I think, I don't know how you do it, but it'd be good that we don't go back to that you know, the hamster wheel of doing a deal with one of these online, because that's 10-15% of take going out our industry, and nothing happens with it, nothing positive happens with it. In fact, some of them are even using that money to buy up the restaurants that they put in the MERD to start with. So for me, that would be a plus, is to get rid of the get it on and it is on and, you know, all of that sort of stuff. You know, make a stand and don't do it. It might be easier said than done, but
Chris, sorry, that's an emotive subject. Oh, sorry.
But I know Ollie very well from It and you know, we've all paid for a very good lifestyle he's led. But you know, there is someone who's tapped into a massive database, right? So we've got to pressure. Let's get it. When was 50% ever a good idea to give away? You know, he could use that same database, and we could do it for 10%. We could do it for 20. You know, whatever else. I think he's already got it. You know, data is key. So we, you know, maybe it's the Ollies of the world say, look, Ollie, you've had a good run. You've done bloody well out of us now. You know, how do you give something back and become a good guy? Now, it's easier said than done, I know, and isn't that a romantic idea? But the fact is, he's got more availability to core market within Scotland than anyone I know. Direct into their living rooms, into their phones, whatever else. And he's the guy we should be working with and saying, look, you have had a good run.
Yeah.
You know? You can
and you're right, all he is, he's a great guy. He's a clever human being. But it just drives me bananas.
It's horrendous.
And it's the public are expecting it, you know. Yes. The public won't walk in. You know, there's a certain I think majority of people that are looking for these deals. So it's just part of the food culture in Scotland at the minute. You know, do
you think that will change now coming out of all this?
Well, it's down to us, isn't it? You know, do we sign up? Do we take the deal? Do we take the quick cash and then pay for it forever? I don't know.
Let's kill it while we've got the opportunity to kill it.
So that would be my question is, so my name's Ed, I work for Guestline, we supply technologies to hotels. So how would you guys then combat that with your own online presence? Things like not just selling buffets, but giving people the chance to book these types of packages on your own site that are not got some specific dates, but they can use later on, like vouchers, things like that. How do you guys see your ability to do that, to combat things like it is on, etc.?
I suppose from a technology point of view, I think we all underestimate how much time it takes. You know, how many of us, you know, we employ someone to do our Twitter account or what's the one you look at the images, Instagram or Facebook or whatever else, you know? And I think what we have all learned is how much work it does take to manage these. And that's why people like Ollie and Itazons and, you know, look, even Booking.com. I mean, you know, they just made it so easy for consumers to use. So instead of thinking we've all got the product, but I think we've just got to look at what the structure of the deal is. And you know, we've got to use their database because they've already got it. Instead of trying to find new stuff, we've all got individual databases. But these guys have such wealth. And I think somehow we're just going to go to them and say, how can you do something positive? Because, you know, Ollie's a good guy, you know, but he's just had a good run. He knows that.
Yeah. But does it have to be a race to the bottom?
Oh, no.
When that's what it's become. You know, if next door's doing 3 courses for £15, where does it leave you?
Yeah, it's very hard because consumers have got just so used to having it coming up. What am I going to have today? And it's become so affordable, even if they don't use it or they just write it off. You know, it's been a total race to the bottom.
Gary Atkins.
But you got to look. There is a way to use it to your advantage, also.
Absolutely.
We do 2 It Is On deals a year, and we do them strategically, and it really boosts our revenue. You know, so there is a way. There is a place in the market, and you know what? They're not going to go away. People have built their restaurants on these platforms, and they need them customers. And let's face it, them customers are looking for a deal. They'll always be looking for a deal. They're not going to go to Monachyle Mhor and pay a full whack. You know, they'll go somewhere else where they pay a half price, or they believe they're getting the same experience for lesser money. Whether they are or not, that's a different story.
We do one a year every year. We have done for 5 years now. But I think I totally agree with how you manage it. But I just think, you know, the idea of giving 50% away, because what's actually happening, people are inflating their prices or doing something else. I think the consumer is getting much more savvy than we often give them credit for, that they can see that people have had to put it up to get the right price. And, you know, as an industry, let's just come and say, look, this is what it's worth and try and work like that. But there is a balance for both things, and I totally agree. And I think this is one thing this has done. At least we're all talking about it now. Instead of not what would normally happen, we'd be at a bar at one of these events, doing it with just 2 or 3 people. And I suppose how we take all this and put it into actually something that we can do something with, and I think that's more important.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Gary Atkinson. From the sort of larger hotels perspective, how do you see that discount culture and things change?
Well, it's a nightmare. I agree with what everybody's saying. Certainly from Peter's point of view, there are a number of people who use it very strategically, but if you wanted to control it, I don't see effectively the Burger Kings are still given 2-for-1s. The lower end quality people are still given 2-for-1s. So it'd have to be a collective. I could see something like, you know, Peter, somewhere in Finniston, where you guys all get together and do something, you know, whether it's once a year or whatever it is. But I think that culture's here to stay, unfortunately. It was interesting, Chris, you might know more about it, Chris Shepperson. Did I read somewhere that on the question of Booking.com, that the French government are looking to do something themselves from a government point of view to reduce the reliance on the online travel agents? I think I read something about that.
Yeah, you did, absolutely, because I think there has to be a shift in that dynamic.
So I think certainly from an industry, we could be putting that on an agenda somewhere. The main thing I wanted to come in with was business rates. I was very involved 5-6 years ago with the then Cabinet Secretary of Scotland and Ken Barclay, who did the Barclay Review for Scotland rates. For those who don't know, we're out of sync with England on our tone dates and revaluations. And again, I'm sure you all know that we are the only sector that are we are our tone date and valuation have worked out on turnover as opposed to other things. So we had a huge involvement with the government and then the Aberdeen Chamber of Commerce, and we were very successful to get the transition relief brought in for 4 years. Now, obviously, each year goes by, the transition relief percentage lessens, but the message that I think I've already raised, but I think we all need to understand and realize is the tone date hasn't been set officially for the next round of negotiation for Scotland, but the actual re-evaluation date has been put off another year. So that might have implications because in Aberdeen, certainly the last round of valuations, our rates went up over 250 to 280%, notably because the tone date was 2015, which was the best ever year that Aberdeen hoteliers had. So that had obviously massive implications, and obviously we've seen the effects not just of COVID, but we've seen the effect of businesses going out of business because they just can't afford the business rates. Now, we in Aberdeen were quite looking forward to the next tone date because obviously we've seen a massive decrease in trade over the last 2 or 3 years, and we would have already benefited from the current scheme of valuating on turnover. That hasn't been agreed yet, and certainly I think it's something that we need to put back on the agenda, on the Scottish agenda, for when the re-evaluations do come to head, because clearly it's not on anybody's agenda at the moment. Obviously it's survival and COVID and what we're doing to reopen and get the economy on track. But I fear that in 2 or 3 years' time, we could be back to the drawing board talking about business rates, where the pressure could be applied now on government because it will become a major factor in 2 or 3 years' time.
Look, I think that's very fair. I mean, overall, if you listen to all the messages, it's how we create a common voice to start dealing with these issues. And at the moment, I think one of the big criticisms across the sector is that there's not a big leadership voice really championing across all the governments, whether it's the Scottish government or whether it's the UK government, whatever. So the real question, particularly for independents, is how that voice is championed across all sectors, both from business rates, I mean, on VAT, the whole thing. Because actually, and I know listening to Tom and Peter and Gary talk earlier, I'm not sure you can pass on the increased prices to the consumer afterwards. The consumer isn't going to have very much in their pocket as it is now. So actually, the price rises are going to have to probably be suffered by restaurants and hotels, I would suggest. But this is all the debate to have, isn't it? And that's why we've got to create a better collaboration in how this is worked through. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Sorry, Tom.
It is fair, but the thing is, we've just got to we've got to go back to being confident in ourselves. And I think as an industry, we beat ourselves up for too long and put ourselves down and think the consumers won't pay. And, you know, when I've been looking at price comparisons, seeing who is charging what, and it's for a good product and consumers happy to pay that, you know, maybe we all need to, you know, eat less and eat better. I mean, these are much bigger pictures, I know, but I think we have to start somewhere. And as an industry, you know, if these are like, I was speaking to a girl who's got a snack van the other day, and she's just taken over. She's just sold a business. She's got a little lay-by at the bottom of her house, so she thought, I'll put a snack van in there, so she gets a little bit of cash. So when she took over, she was selling a cup of tea at £1 and a polystyrene cup. First thing she did, she bought a reusable paper cup. She now charges £2. And, you know, she said, these aren't posh people in the, you know, big fancy German car. There's this jock coming down who's cutting the grass, or the boys of the council who's stopping in. And she couldn't believe how they all noticed, oh, you've got a reusable cup and it's £2. You know, they gave her a bit of gyp for it, but she said they're still coming. She's got better bacon. She's got better sausages. Everything has gone up a little bit more. But she's saying she's actually busier than she was before. And they have, you know, people are connecting. And I think, you know, children now, they go home and tell their parents, why aren't you using this? Why aren't you using that? And let's capitalize on that. We've all made our main, we think it's only worth something. But I do think we do have to come together as an industry. So, you know, we're Scotland's 5 million people, yeah? There's 5 million people in a 40-minute radius of Bristol, I think. Right? So let's lead by example. You know, let's come together as a country. I mean, I'm a white settler, don't get me wrong. I moved here 30 plus years ago to South Wales, but I've never owned a suit. I've only owned a kilt. And my thing is, you know, let's lead by example going forward here, guys. You know, if we're not, let's come to the industry. Let's do it. Let's only use recyclable stuff. It's all these little things that shows a good story for people coming back. All it is positivity, opposed to, well, we've always done it like this, but I can't get open because there's no money in it. You know, I think we do have to look at every aspect of what we do.
Yeah, look, I absolutely agree. I think there are times it gets too negative, and I think we've got to try and find positive solutions and create a way of sharing that knowledge across the sector. Sorry, Alex.
Andrea, I was just going to say, Tom, if you could bring you in here, Andrea. Andrea's MD of Green Tourism, works with hotels all over the world to attract, or it's an accreditation system that hotels apply for. And there is a green opportunity here, isn't there, Andrea, to capitalize on this as well? Tom was saying, you know, reusable cups, people are encouraged by that. You know, it's a perception of quality, but it's also a perception of green awareness. How are you finding that with your members? Can you see there's an opportunity coming out of this to really capitalize on green credentials?
Yeah, it's interesting. We're hearing a lot about the challenges that are happening with businesses. Chemical use is a big issue. How can I be green and still disinfect? I need to. Single-use products, definitely. The desire or the perceived desire that people are going to want to have their food wrapped in cling film or in boxes so that it's not being touched by people. But there are green alternatives to this. And actually, the United Nations World Travel Organization and other bodies internationally are talking about sustainability being a key message going forward. International travellers, but also for the domestic market, people are now looking more about the fact that this pandemic has indicated how community involvement is so much more important. We talked about local food and going more local and completing supporting the local community better, caring for people, being a big part of sustainability. And it was a big on the agenda before the pandemic started, but still on the edge, a bit niche. But what we're seeing, the trends going forward, is becoming more and more mainstream. And actually, a lot of organisations, destinations and tourism agencies are now saying this is something that needs to be integrated within your recovery plan, because if you don't do that, then you'll be missing out against other people who will be doing it.
The thing is, we're all actually starting off, you know, we've all been closed for the same amount of time here. So, you know, as I always say myself, we've never got enough time. Do you know how much, you know, I can't believe how much time we've had. How many of them, you know, this is the time we should be looking at products, because, you know, anything we had before, if it's not out of date or whatever else, we're going to have to buy in. You know, I don't know any hotels, any toilet paper in the cupboards. You know, it's lots of simple things that we can actually start now and just saying, look, you know, it's a terrible thing. It's an international thing that's happened. But as a nation, you know what we have done? These are little things we're doing as an industry, working together. Because it's not like the products aren't there. The products are already there. We've just got to actually try a bit harder.
And there's lots
to find it.
There's lots of practical, simple things that businesses can do that don't have big capital expenditure, that are going to appeal to the customers when they come back. It's about caring for people. And that's something that I think this pandemic has really shown has been a key part of it. We're desperately waiting for the protocols to be announced. I'm working very closely with Visit Britain and Visit Scotland and the other all 4 nations around what the protocols are going to say, when they're going to be released. I've been told more recently that it's likely to be around about 2 weeks before the UK or England starts opening 4th of July. So we're not going to even get some of the protocols around what the government recommended until probably the middle of June. And businesses need time to implement those protocols. So we're working really hard to try and build guidelines and advice to businesses. But we have had a lot of interest in businesses. Surprisingly enough, we've had businesses join, even more so than maybe before pandemic, saying we're identifying this as something that we want to be doing, and we've got time, as we said, we've got time now to do those measures, and there's definitely an identification that going forward the consumers and customers will be interested and be actively seeking people who are looking after their guests and their staff better than they might be other people, other businesses.
Lawrence and David, I was going to bring you in here. Lawrence sent Chris and I an email the other day about related to the 6 foot office plan. Is that right, Lawrence? It was about redesigning offices, existing office space within the workspace to try and make it more sort of social distance friendly whilst incorporating people into that. And I don't know how practical that is, but I was wondering from both your perspectives, David, Ralph, have you had any requests from clients for David's an architect specializing in hospitality. I wondered if you'd had any interaction with your clients about that.
To be honest, the last stuff was it was just before it all happened. We were doing jobs on offices to put more people in there, I think, and like the training spaces were even more packed than they ever were. But nobody's really come back on that. I think they've invested too much hope and effort into doing that. They kind of want things just to go back to the way they were as soon as possible. But for the moment, I think they're just putting, gaffer tape or something on a desk and people back to back and following any rules that they can grasp, one person in a lift at a time. But if you've got a 70-story building, I mean, it's going to take all day to get people in and out. And then if there's a fire, you're never going to get people out without having to mix them. So I haven't actually had that come up just yet. Most of the stuff has been, like I said, it was outdoorsy type of leisure. So I'm still waiting for that, someone to come and say, we need to reorganize our office. But for the moment, I think work from home, staggered starts, all of that stuff seems to be more important.
I think, one thing I think we've got to be very conscious of, especially for rural businesses, when we open up again, other people in the area have quite enjoyed people not being on their doorstep. We are seeing a bit of a negative backlash about going to the countryside at the moment. And so I do feel our story from an industry also needs to say, look, guys, we are rural locations. We need customers to come here. That's how we make our money. And it needs to be very positive, and it needs to, people need to know how important it is. Cause there's a sign up at the end of the glen, which we actually made at the beginning, because someone made a terrible one. One of our girls, she's quite artistic, she made a nice one to go at the end of the glen. And there's a group chat in the village, and we said, look, we're looking to take that down next week. Oh no, we don't want anybody here. We don't have any cases. And I'm saying, well, guys, we need to start putting some, guys, please come out, but just be conscious. We've got all this water, lockside, the hills for people to go to. We need to encourage people to come back to these places. And I think this story is a really important one, because people, like the islands, for instance, I mean, like our friends, they've got self-catering businesses in Harris, and like the locals say, hey, you're not going to be open at all this year. We're not letting anybody on. And I think this is another part of the story, which how we take from our industry positive, say, look, guys, yes, things are getting better, government doing what they can, but we've got to get people back out again, because the value in Scotland is Scotland. Is getting out into it.
But there's also the transport issues as well for those islands, the Hebrides, the Tyrese, the coal, everything. I mean, until CalMac can work out how to operate properly to get them out there, because they've had a tough time recently, haven't they?
I think we've got so bogged down with being closed and worried, and we can't make up a clear vision of opening. But I do think we do need to start spinning some positivity about what we can do, even though the problem is we don't know what we can do yet. But I think, let's be realistic. The government have to go with a meter. If the rest of Europe can go with a meter, we've got to go with a meter. And then that makes it a lot easier for a lot of us to actually decide what we can and can't do. And we can start spinning some positive spin about, what's going to happen next.
The hard reality is that we cannot continue to have an economy that is in complete stagnation and suppressed. We just cannot sustain that. What we're doing now is utterly unsustainable. And as businesses, we've got to try and do something about that to help. And I agree, we've got to get things moving again as responsibly as we possibly can. But we've got to get the economy moving, and it'll be businesses who do that, not governments.
No, you're absolutely right, Paul. I'm conscious of time, I think this has been an absolutely fascinating session. So thank you to Tom and Peter, particularly for their input. There's quite a discussion going on chat about obviously how we can actually create that impetus. So depending on your views, maybe we should try and have that discussion next week openly about how we actually make sure we do get that positivity and that collaboration. Because everyone keeps talking about it, but actually how do we actually put it into play and actually make sure it does happen? Question mark.
There's been some comment there, quite a few comments about the fact that there's a lack of a collaborative voice for the food service industry. So there's the STA and there's the Hospitality Association, everything else, but there's nothing specific for food service. So there's definitely a scope.
So shall we try and have a chat on that next week and try and do something around that? Might be quite interesting. Question mark. But otherwise, thank you for your time and conscious of time. It's been actually a fascinating session. We have recorded this and we'll be releasing it to everyone, not everyone, because I think it's a great discussion to go out as well. So thank you very much indeed, and look forward to seeing you again next week.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Thanks a lot.
Week. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot, Tom. Thanks.